Where were you born and when?
I was born in the very house we're in right now in 1918.
And where did you go to school?
Right here in Meridian, right next door,
And how about where did you go to college?
at the University of Idaho in Moscow.
And what did you study at the University of Idaho?
Agriculture, that's the only thing I knew in those days.
And what was your experience like at the U of I?
It was good. It was pleasant, and I enjoyed it. I had to work my way through, but then that paid off in the long run.
And then what did you do after you graduated?
Well, it wasn't long before I went into the Army. The draft was on, and I was about to get my numbers about to come up, so I volunteered. I knew I didn't want to pack a rifle, and I thought, well, if I volunteered, I might have a little choice of what I did.
And so what was the choice?
The Air Corps, Army Air Corps. That's not, now it's all changed. It's Army. It's Air Force now. At that time, the Air Corps was a part of the Army. It wasn't a separate unit at all.
And where did you do your training then once you volunteered?
Well, first I went to Jefferson Barracks, which is just an assembly point, and then eventually, that was only there just a matter of practically days, and then went to San Antonio for assignment, and at that time I didn't know what and there we got an assignment, and I was assigned to go to officer training for a weather observer, and they didn't have any at that time. They didn't have any openings, so I went to in training or on job training, and that was at Albuquerque, New Mexico. And while I was there, we still studied weather observing, and it was real pleasant. The only problem was at that time a buck private paid $20 a month, and I couldn't live like I wanted, so I saw the sign be an aviation cadet, $75 a month while you're in training, and $175 when you were commissioned. And I figured, I don't know what I have to do, but that's for me. That $75 looked good, and so I didn't know. As I say, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew you had to fly some way, and for some reason I was interested in aerial photography, and so I went to I applied for that, and then had to take a physical, and so when I did that, the doctor said, "Why do you apply for aerial photography?" And I knew one eye wasn't as good as the other, and so I explained that to him, and he said, "Your eyes are 20/20. Why don't you apply for pilot training?" And I said, "Well, fine, sign me up." And that's what he did, and that's what I got into flying.
And what kind of plane were you trained on then?
What's called a P-50. Set it off again.
Okay.
Okay, now I know.
Okay.
Okay. I trade in what's called a PT 21, and that was at Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that's where I started my flying career.
And what was that like? The first time you flew a plane?
Well, it 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 was real hard training because, in fact, 60% of the cadets flunked out, and when you were always harassed. The instructors harassed you to see if you could take the beating. And I always remember that when the instructors would threaten to wash you out the next day, and a lot of the fellows, they'd go back to their barracks in tears because they wanted to fly all their life. Well, I didn't care whether I flew or not, so when I went back to the barracks, I packed my bag and ready to leave. And that day never comes, so I did get. And once you get through primary training, you're pretty well set, unless you really flub up real bad.
And so, when did the war start? Were you in training when the war started?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I was still at Albuquerque when it started.
And then when did you go to Europe?
Shut it off again.
Okay.
Let me. No, see, I can't remember the dates or the.
That's okay.
No, let me think. Oh, okay. I went overseas in August of '43.
And where'd you go?
We flew across the Atlantic Ocean and landed in Prestwick, Scotland. And from there you went down they trucked you down to England, and you got your assignment to a flying group there.
And when did you take your first mission?
That I can't remember
Okay.
either.
Well, do you remember kind of what that feeling was like on your first mission?
Well, you always remember it. At that time, of course, I was a pilot then, of course, and your first mission was as a co-pilot with an experienced crew. And I remember you flying across the channel, and the first thing you know, all encountered German fighters. And the first thought was, why, they're trying to kill me. and and the odd part is that at the group that I was assigned to, one of my former classmates, pilot training, was there. And I remember I asked if I could go as his co-pilot on the first mission, and of course he didn't have any say in it, so it didn't materialize. But on that first mission, there was the German fighters came right through the formation and took him out. So if I'd have been co-pilot with him, why, that would have been my first and last mission.
Wow. So then you fly as the co-pilot just one time?
One time.
Okay.
After that, you're considered experienced.
After one time?
One time.
Wow. So when did you do your first mission as pilot, or what was that like?
Well, it was a memorable experience, and as I say, you the first thing you know is that this is not friendly territory.
And what part of Germany were you flying in?
Say that again.
What part of Germany was it that you were flying towards? Like, where was the target?
The first mission, it was submarine pans at Nance.
And so, I guess what's it like to fly a B-17 that's full of bombs? How's that to fly?
It's remarkably easy. It's a real pleasant job. They respond real good. There used to always be conflict between the B-17 and the B-24s on which was a better plane. And fellows that flew both planes said that a B-17, you flew a B-17, but you drove a B-24. One of the other interesting things of how they compared it, the B-17 said the B-24 was a crate that they shipped the B-17s over in.
Did you fly both?
Oh, no.
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 So, tell me about how you got shot down.
Well, we were on our way back from the mission. We'd been to Calnon and bombed a aircraft factory. And we were on our way home. We were over Denmark and attacked by German fighters, and we didn't have any fighter escort or anything like that, so you were strictly on your own, and we were the top position in the squadron, and that's the one the German fighters head for first.
And so they shot out an engine, or what happened?
No, we were hit in the tail, and it jammed the right rudder, and that put us in a skid. And of course, you lose airspeed when that happens, and once they get you out of the formation, why, that's all she wrote.
And so how did you react when that happened as the pilot?
Well, I ordered everyone else to bail out, and then had to get out myself.
Did you train for that, to jump out?
No. So that's the first. It's always the first time. You don't need training for that. You're assigned, you know where you're supposed to go out, and so you don't need to train.
Okay, so you had to jump out of the plane, and then what happened?
Well, to be something interesting before we bailed out, the the engineer who is up in the cockpit with you, when you bail out, he's supposed to pull the release to open the bomb bay doors, and the pilot, co-pilot, and the engineer go out there. Well, when it came time to bail out, I turned around and to go out the bomb bays, and the doors were closed, and I couldn't imagine why the engineer hadn't opened them. I come to find later on that he did try, but the doors were shot up so bad that they wouldn't open. So he started across the catwalk to bail out in the waist, and when he got on the catwalk, we got hit again, and it knocked him off the catwalk, and he fell down on the bomb bay doors. They opened up, let him out, and then closed back up. And he was wounded, but that's the way he got out of the plane.
So how'd you get out if they closed back up?
No, I had to go down through the hatch down to the nose and bail out from the nose.
And how long were you falling for, do you think?
It's hard to say, but I know the thing is, of course, you kind of debate when to pull the ripcord, and I fell as long as I dared, and when I thought I could hear the plane, and so I kind of kicked myself on the back and looked up, and the plane was just right above me, and it was falling just like a leaf. And I waited as long as I dared to pull the ripcord, and when I did, the opening of the chute, the plane caught up with me, and the wing went by me, about 10 feet or so, and I saw it stop turning, knowing it had hit the ground, and then I hit the ground. So that's how close I was to the ground when the chute opened.
Did it hurt when you hit the ground?
Yeah, kind of. I must have landed kind of face first, because I was asked later on if I was wounded, and I said no, and they said, well, your face is bloody, so I must have hit the ground, because I wasn't hit in the plane.
And then, were you alone then when you landed? Was any of your crew around where you?
They were around. I didn't know where they were, but when I hit the ground, of course, you're supposed to try to escape, and so I got out of my chute and started to run to where there's a row of hedges. When I got up there, here was a German soldier waiting for me. So that's the way I was captured.
And then where did they take you?
I took to apparently a little village. I don't know how big it was, but locked us up in a kind of a jail, I guess it was, and there were other prisoners there too. In fact, my pilot, my co-pilot and bombardier were there, and one of the crew members that got shot up in the plane was there. plus one or two people from other planes. So there were several planes shot down there, and crews wound up there.
And did they keep you there long?
No, we were there, I don't know, maybe a day or two, and then they put us on a train and took us down to Frankfurt, which was an assembly place for prisoners of war.
And then I guess how long were you a prisoner of war?
In a year, 18 months actually.
And how did they treat you?
Physically fine. I never had a German lay a hand on me, but starving me, yes, eventually.
And what did they want from you?
At Frankfurt?
Yeah.
Well, that's another kind of interesting thing. They interrogate you, and they ask you all pertinent questions about. And the thing is, they take you out, and they took me out and sat at a table across the German officer, and he started asking me questions, and it was just you're ordered to only give your name, rank, and serial number. And I did that, and then he wanted to know where I was born and a few things like that, and they were insignificant. And when he got down to pertinent questions about where you were in the formation and how vulnerable were you, I said, well, that's as far as I can go. And he said, no, you have to fill this out for the Red Cross. Well, I knew the Red Cross didn't interrogate anyone, so I said, well, that's as far as I can go. And he stood up and pulled out his pistol and pointed at me, and he said, now, I can shoot you anytime I want because no one knows where you are or what's happened to you. Well, I didn't think he would, but had I seen him shoot someone, I don't know what I'd have done.
Yeah, what was your first thought when you knew you were a prisoner of war?
My first thought was that my mother's going to get that dreaded telegram saying that I was missing in action, and not knowing that I was still alive and still had a chance.
And were you able, after some time, to communicate with your family?
In the prison camp, they gave you a form. They gave you four postcards, and then one little letter form that every month, and you could write to your family.
What'd you tell them when you wrote to them?
There's nothing you could tell them. All you could tell them is that the weather's fine, doing all right, because you knew your letters were going to be censored. And one thing I can't understand, my mother kept these letters, of course, and there was one letter that every word was blocked out. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what it could have been, because I knew better than to say anything that was detrimental.
Huh. If they just scratched it out?
Oh, they just block it out in black.
Wow. Wow. So how did your family react when you came home?
Of course, they were glad to see me.
What was the first thing you did when you got home?
have a good meal.
So what did they feed you at the prison camp? When they fed you?
We the first 6 months wasn't bad. We got Red Cross parcels, and they had 12 pounds in them, and every man got one a week. And they had had spam in them, corned beef, a package of cigarettes, and sometimes some kind of dried fruit or something. And it was adequate. Now the Germans, they gave us a little food. For one that I remember is they had a barley soup, and if you didn't mind seeing the larva in it, why, it was edible. And once in a while we got sauerkraut, which was good in those days.
And so then what happened after that 6 months?
Well, we were transferred down to Moosburg. That's when we went on this in March in the blizzard and everything. And when we got down to Moosburg, we got practically no food. However, that was not entirely the Germans' fault, because the thing is they couldn't get these Red Cross parcels into us because their railroads and highways were all shot up, and the trains were shot up, and trucks were shot up. So to be fair, they couldn't get it into us. So that was pretty slim pickings then.
And so, why did they move you? Why did they make you take that march?
Because the Russians were getting close to us.
Okay.
When we left, we could hear the guns.
So how long did you have to march for?
I don't remember right now how many days, but we were out in this blizzard, and for about 3 days. Then they put us on the boxcars on the railroad, and we were on that for 2 or 3 days.
And did you freeze?
Well,
How cold was it?
It was below zero in a blizzard.
So tell me about the best cup of coffee you ever had.
Oh, well, on the march we noticed, kind of looking ahead, and noticed a kind of a group of the prisoners, and there were a couple of German women were pouring out hot water. We had in our backpack probably had Nescafe, and they so you held out your cup, and those women would give you hot water, and that, as I say, that was the best cup of coffee I ever had. It was kind of odd. One of the women said something about, my son is a prisoner of war, and they've taken him over to the United States. And she said, I hope they're not treating him like we're treating you.
Wow. So what was the vow you made when you warmed up?
I swore that if I ever get warm again, I'll never complain about the cold weather, and I haven't.
So, was the name of the camp Moosburg when you moved?
Yeah, Moosburg, yeah.
And how many prisoners were there?
100,000. The things were getting cramped, because Germany was getting closed in on, so they didn't have any place to. They run out of prison camps, so Moosburg was about the last assembly place.
And so, what was life like there? What did you do?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. All you could do was sit and wait.
And could you hear the fighting and stuff, or see anything?
This was in April, and the weather was quite nice. So we kind of got in the habit of just sitting out alongside of the barracks, and eventually we could start hearing guns again. So we knew who it was, of course, and the question was, what are they going to do with us? Because they had trouble moving 10,000 out of Stalag Luft 3. So how are they going to move 100,000? So we kind of got in the habit of sitting out in the side of the building and listening to the guns, and on April 30th, we could hear that night we could hear traffic out on the road, and we didn't know. We knew it was tanks and trucks, but we didn't know whether they were moving to defend the camp or retreating. Well, the next morning we went out to sit in the sun, and there wasn't a sound. And about 9 o'clock, while a P-51 flew around the camp and did a little strafing on the side, and then at 9 o'clock sharp, all hell broke loose. The Americans were shooting over the camp into Moosburg, and the Germans in Moosburg were shooting over the camp back at the Americans. And for three hours we sat there in no man's land. And at noon we looked down into Moosburg, and we could see the American flag go up. So we knew the war was over, for us anyway, and about that same time a German tank came into the camp to see if there's any Germans in there, and so then we knew that we were at least free at last.
And so did they come and liberate you right then?
Well, we stayed in the camp there for another 2 or 3 days, and then they flew us out. They flew us out to France.
And you got a bed? Did you get a bed in France?
Did what?
Did you get a bed, a place to sleep?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they flew us out to Le Havre, and there was a big camp there where they brought the troops in, and before they went to the front. So now they just worked it backwards. When you went home, while you went there, so you had food and everything. The only thing is, they wouldn't let you eat all you wanted, and those that did got sick. So
yeah, I bet that would take some getting used to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When I got shot down, I had a 32-inch waist, and I had a 28-inch waist when I got out. I didn't get a chance to weigh myself, but I did lose a little weight.
Did anybody get sick in the camp or hurt or?
Now,
Stalag Luft 3?
Stalag Luft 3 was, that's where this big great escape was that you read about.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, it wasn't. Stalag Luft 3 was divided into 5 compounds: north, south, east, west, and central. I was in central. The Great Escape happened in one of the other, in the English compound, and they were masters at escape. They started. There's always tunneling going on, and so on this one, they decided to dig 3 tunnels in case they were discovered, which they always invariably were. They were going to dig. No, stop again.
Okay.
Oh. They decided to dig 3 tunnels, Tom, Dick, and Harry. And they had a really elaborate, they had a ventilation system down in, I don't know, I forget now which tunnel completed, but they had lights down there. The way they got lights were, at one time they sent some forced labor fellas in to do some wiring, and they went to do something, and there was this wire there, and the prisoners stole it. So that's why they got their lights down there. But they did complete the one tunnel, and they were going to plan the escape. Well, the night they were going to escape, there was an air raid, and they doubled their guards out there. Well, they got 76 prisoners out before the tunnel was discovered. And all of them but 3 were recaptured in a matter of days. And I think it was 56 of them that they shot. And then they passed a bulletin around in the camp and said, tunneling is no longer a game. So they were giving us warning that better be careful. However, they did keep tunneling, but the problem is that a lot of times in the tunneling, what do you do? What do you do with the dirt? Well, there's several ways that they did it. Sometimes they put it up above the rooms until the boards started breaking. One of the best ways that lasted quite a while was, for some reason, the YMCA's sent us garden seeds. And so the guys decided that they'd have a garden. So now the Germans would let you have a shovel if you guaranteed not to use them to do any tunneling. So what they did was spade up the dirt outside the barracks. Well, this worked fine until the dirt got about 6 or 8 inches high. And of course, then they knew there was tunneling, and they'd soon find them. And another way of getting rid of the dirt was there was a path around the house, around all the buildings, and they'd take a shirt and fill up the legs with dirt, and with a string at the bottom, so you could pull the string and the dirt would dribble out. And on this path around, the fellows would walk around and they'd dribble out the dirt, and other fellows would come by and, of course, walk it into the ground. So there was a ways of doing it, but tunnels were always almost invariably found.
That's pretty clever, though.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty clever. So,
Yeah.
did you ever think about tunneling or trying to escape?
Absolutely not. What would you? How would you get out, or how would you live? You were in the middle of a foreign country. You didn't know the language, and you could get shot awful easy.
So, when you were there, did you ever think about how long is this going to last?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One interesting. There was the International Red Cross the camps could be inspected by a neutral country, and one observer wrote in a article later on that in one of the barracks, on one wall there was a drawing of a sun rising. Under it was a caption, "How much longer?" Across the room was the same painting with a caption under it, "One less day." So you always are thinking about it.
So, how many days? You said a year. Was it a year and a half?
Yeah, a year and a half.
And what's the was there someone you met that had been there longer, or like what's the longest that you knew of?
Oh, one time we were standing by the fence, and there were some English soldiers came by. They were on a work detail, and everyone had bantered back and forth, and one of them asked, "How long have you been here?" And real smugly we told him, and I don't know how long it had been then, but we told him how long, and we said, "How long you been here?" He said, "We were picked up at Dunkirk," which was when the British got run out of France. So I think that was 4 years or something.
That's a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, yeah. So, what were the conditions like at the Stalag Luft 3 compared to Moosburg?
Oh, there was no comparison. Stalag Luft 3 wasn't bad at all. In fact, there was activities at Stalag Luft 3. They'd send in musical instruments. paperback books. So there was things to do, but not in Moosburg. There was nothing there.
And you were at Moosburg a year?
Well, that's where we wound up.
Yeah.
That's where we were liberated from.
So were you aware of the concentration camps when you guys were in the
Oh,
prison camps?
absolutely.
What do you think of that?
There, at one time, they brought in some new prisoners, and they had been at Buchenwald. And the thing about being a prisoner, the Germans were real jealous of who handled the prisoners. The Luftwaffe took care of the flying prisoners and the Wehrmacht, the ground prisoners. Well, the Luftwaffe heard about there being some of the American flyers in Buchenwald, and they went and got them out and brought them up to Stalag Luft 3, and that's when we heard about these stories.
What did they tell you?
About the gas chambers.
Was that something that concerned you that might happen to you as a prisoner?
Absolutely. If they could do it to one, they can do it to another.
So, did you ever go back after the war?
No.
And visit the camps
No.
or Germany?
No.
Never any desire to go back there?
At one time, I thought it'd kind of be nice to find Stalag Luft 3, but where it was. And it's kind of odd. My navigator one of his kids worked in Germany, and so he went back to visit him, and so he thought he'd see if he could find Moosburg, and so they went to Moosburg and inquired around, and no one seemed to remember where the prison camp was. And eventually they found someone that knew where it was, and they took him out there. And all there was left of it was there were three buildings still standing there. And my navigator's wife said, the navigator's name was Ted, and when Ted saw those buildings, he turned as white as a sheet. So that was the effect that it had on him.
Did you ever have nightmares or anything when you came back? Was it hard to kind of readjust
No.
after being a prisoner?
You used to have, they weren't particularly nightmares, but every once in a while you'd have one where you were captured again. I know one time I said, oh no, not again.
Yeah. Well, that's good to wake up then from that.
Yeah.
At least you could wake up from that.
Yeah.
Wow. So what did they call you?
Kriegies, which is German for Christ. It's a long German word, but it shortened down to Kriegie.
And what does Kriegi mean?
Prisoner. Well, the whole Kriegsgefangenen, which means prisoner of war. We called them goons. They had Germans that patrolled in the camp, and of course you know your idea what a goon isn't flattering, but we told the Germans that it stood for German officer or non-com, and which they apparently believed.
That's funny. I wonder if they ever found out different.
Probably later on.
So did they call you Kriegies, or you kind of just called yourself that?
Oh, we call ourselves that.
It's kind of. I bet you have to have a bit of a sense of humor when things are that bleak.
Oh, yeah. The one thing that happened, there are things that happened. One was one time our German went into our commandant's office or barracks and said there was something going on over one of the barracks that was causing problems or something. And so we went over there, and what had happened was, now every day every once a day you got a pitcher of hot water in these little combines that are in the barracks, and when the commandant got over there, he found out that the barracks were built about 3 feet off the ground. And what had happened, these goons sometimes would crawl under there to see if there's any tunneling. Well, there was a goon or two under there, and the prisoners were pouring hot water through the floor on them, and they couldn't get out because the guys outside had the pitchers of water. So the colonel's wife, he said he had to put a stop to it, but there were things like that happened.
That's pretty funny because they can't get out.
Yeah,
right? They're trapped under there, getting hot water poured on them. You didn't worry about them retaliating?
No.
No.
Not anything like that. In fact, they were friendly to us. The only thing is, you were not supposed to talk to them. And the reason for that was that there are certain prisoners or certain guards that could be bribed. And so they had a committee that if you if you wanted something, why, see, as the committee knew what guards could be bribed, and if you wanted something, why, let them know and they'd get it for you, because you could always find something that the Germans wanted, of course, cigarettes or something like that. And now I got a pocket knife, and what I got the knife for was, we used to take the tin cans and make cooking pans out of them, and you could, with a pocket knife, you could sear everything and bend it, but but that's the reason they didn't want you to talk to the Germans. If they came up to you, that's fine, but you don't start the conversation.
And was that something they told you, or you just learned it?
Oh, about bribing them?
Yeah.
Oh, you were told. There was quite an organization in the camp.
So, do you think that there are misconceptions that people have about what went on
Oh, well,
that need to be corrected?
well, of course, I don't know what most people think. Of course, some people think that it was nice to be there, you're in a safe place, you're out of the war and everything, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty rough.
You always worried what could happen.
Well, yeah, and then you don't know how long you're going to be there
That's
either.
right, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's really hard.
There was never a doubt in your mind that we're going to win this war, but how long will it take? And what'll happen? What'll happen in the end when we win it? Now they talk about one prison camp where the Germans were bragging about winning the war and everything, and they said that we're going to win this war, and when we do, you're going to rebuild all of the bombed out buildings. If we don't win the war, you won't see it. So there was the threat.
Yeah. So, that meaning they would keep you in the camps and make you do labor?
Execute you.
Or execute you?
Yeah.
Wow. That's scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really scary. So, what'd you do when you came back home? Did you stay in the military?
No, no. I did fly in the National Guard, but that was the National Guard. That wasn't in the Air Force.
And so, did you move back to Idaho?
I hadn't left except that's the only time I left was college and the war.
And so then what'd you do?
Well, I worked for the University of Idaho Extension Service, which doesn't mean too much to you, but the Extension Service had my job was in Ada County here was to run the 4-H program.
That's kind of fun. Is that with kids too?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
oh, it was all kids.
All kids? From
All-
what ages?
From 10 to 16.
And what kind of programs were they?
Well, of course, you had your 4-H club, your livestock clubs, your home ec club, and those were the main ones then.
And do you like Idaho? What do you love about Idaho?
I've never, I saw a lot of different places, and I never saw a place that I'd trade.
And what city were you born in?
Right here in Meridian.
And tell me about the farm we're on.
Well, it started out raising during the Depression, raising everything that you can imagine. Dairy cows, horses, pigs, chicken, turkeys. That was the sole existence then.
And was it your folks' farm?
Well, they bought it. Yeah.
And now you're going to sell it?
Yeah, we sure like to. If you got any offers, well, we'll take them.
And so you're just growing corn now?
Mostly corn and winter wheat.
And do you miss working?
Not at all. It'd be nice to be able to do something. That's the problem now.
Yeah. How are you going to celebrate your birthday?
How do I? It's just another day.
just another day. I
Yeah.
know, that's how I feel too.
Yeah.
The more birthdays you have, the less you care about them.
That's right, and the quicker they come.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, is there anything else you want to tell me? I think you got some pretty good stories.
Well, I told you all I can remember.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. How'd you come up with that title?
I got I used to have, and I don't, that was in a film that I had several films, and which I can't find now, and it was in one of them, that comment. They were telling about how heavy the losses were, particularly in the first part of the war.
And do you know how many planes were shot down in the whole war?
There was, you mean B-17s, or they manufactured 12,000, and I think about a third of them or so were lost. I have seen that figure, but I can't remember it now. But there was a lot of them lost.
And what were the Germans flying? What kind of planes did the Germans fly?
Messerschmitt 109 and Focke-Wulf. And then, of course, they had bomber too, but I don't know what they called them. The Messerschmitts, the fighters, were the ones that we were concerned about.
And so when you flew and you dropped the bombs, could you see them detonate?
The bombardier could, no one else could.
Could you hear it as high
No,
up as you were?
no.
So it was just flying then for you.
Of course, the thing is, your own plane is making so much noise that you wouldn't hear the explosions.
So you're just looking for the fighters coming at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you're concerned about staying in formation. So the pilot, all he's doing is keeping an eye on that plane next to him, because that guy's watching another plane.
Was there ever a time, besides when you got shot down and got captured, that you had to get out of formation, or that you were forced out of formation?
Oh no.
No.
Yeah. I don't know quite what you.
Well, I just wonder, like, how many planes are in the formation together?
Depending on what time of the war. When I was flying 18 in a formation, and then there might say a lead formation. Then 1,000 feet above is another 18. 1,000 feet below is another 18.
That's a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that many.
Oh, during the latter part of the war, they talked about these big formations coming over, and on one of the articles, they said it took a half. The thing is, these formations follow each other. These three formations, they're following another one. They said it took a half hour for the entire groups to pass a certain point.
Huh.
So you think there's thousands, the number of planes were in the thousands.
I just think of that from like a civilian's perspective looking up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So what do you think of what they fly now?
Well, at the time I flew a B-17 was the biggest plane made, and the 24. So times have changed.
Did you ever want to fly anything smaller, or you like flying the big one?
I enjoyed flying the big ones. The 17 was a real easy plane to fly, and it had lots of memories.
Did you ever think about flying commercially? Nah.
No, lots of fellas did, but the problem was, after the war, of course, they were thinking about flying four-engine passenger plane. But after the war, four-engine pilots were a dime a dozen. There were lots of fellows that wanted to fly commercial, but they were just, and in my case, I was still only a second lieutenant, and here they had majors and colonels, you know, would have had a priority, and would have had a lot more time in a four-engine plane than I did.
Yeah. Well, since you worked in agriculture, did you ever think about crop dusting?
No,
No.
no, I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's about it, unless there's anything else you want to tell me about it.
I can't think of anything that.
Okay.
I was trying to think of interesting things that. One you talked about whether there were funny things happen.
Oh, yeah.
One time I was walking around this path, and I noticed down by the one fence, there's quite a group of POW just there at this fence. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Went down there and just outside the camp, you might say, there was a German area, a compound where the guard stayed, and there was a so-called hospital out there, and there was and your mail came in there, and they had sensors, lady sensors. Here's some of these ladies, they were sunbathing out alongside the side of their barracks, and of course the prisoners were watching that, and our commandant in his book, he commented on this. He said that these guys were down there gawking at the women, and he said, I had to put a stop to it and tell the girls to go inside, but I took one last look myself.
That's pretty funny. Well, it was probably something new to look at,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah.
Yeah. It's probably been a while for some of you guys. Oh.
And another thing that's kind of interesting, we had a radio in camp. I never had off and on why news would come into the camp, or maybe I'll explain a little. The barracks were divided into little, little rooms. It was a big, everything was open, but there were these little segments. I don't know, I forget how to word it. But every once in a while they'd call out in the barracks, gin time. Gin meaning information. And we'd all gather in one place and they'd read the BBC news about the war and everything. And I always wondered, how did they get that news? Well, you knew they had to have a radio. After the war, in some of the books I read, they told about how they got the radio. They one time out in this this area outside, the Germans called it a Vorlager. I remember that now. And there was a so-called hospital out there. Well, one time one of their prisoners was taken. The guard will take you over there to the hospital. And one time this one prisoner, they took him over there and sent him back to the compound. As he went by, here was this radio that the guards were using, sitting on a table there. He just picked it up, stuck it under his coat, and when they got it back to the camp, to the compound, they took it all apart and hid pieces of it all around. And shortly after this, the Germans made a surprise inspection, trying to find this radio. Well, of course, they never did because it's all in little pieces. And then eventually they put it back together. Well, in these little, I'm trying to think of what we used to call those. They were little rooms, 6 to 8, or not rooms, but sections, 6 to 8 people. There was one table, and it had 4x4 legs on it. Well, what they did, they took out one of those legs and hollowed it out and put the radio down in there. And left a nail there. When they wanted to hear the news, they ran a wire from the lights down to that nail and into the radio.
That's pretty clever. Yeah, because how would you hide it otherwise? Because you don't have anywhere to hide it, right?
No. They were always pulling inspections, you know. They'd even get you out of bed for inspection to make sure you didn't have time to hide something, because they were always looking for contraband, you might say.
But how would, the radio, I can see how they got it, but what other kind of stuff did they think you would get?
Well, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Unless they're looking for things that the guard that could be bribed brought in.
That makes sense. So how did you feel about the politics of the war? Or were you just doing your duty?
Oh yeah, you knew what you had to do. You were trained to do it. My only problem was I got in the war too early.
And why? Why do you say that?
Because when we were flying, we didn't have any fighter escort. They didn't come till a month or two later.
And what would the escorts do?
Protect the formations, fend off the German fighters.
So yeah, maybe things would have been different then.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you know. In fact, flying, it wasn't too bad. Toward the end of the war, why guys wanted to fly to get their missions in. We were supposed to fly 25 missions, and the average life of a combat crew was 6 to 8 missions.
That's not very good odds, is it?
So you knew what you were going to get. It's just a matter of when and where.
Yeah. So how many missions did you fly?
6.
So that was average,
Yeah,
huh?
well, I was average.
Wow.
And of course, we got shot down October 9th, and October 14th was this big Schweinfurt raid that you have referred to, in which we lost 60 B-17s on that one day. So and 10 men to a plane, you know what the losses were.
And what year was that?
43.
So when did the war officially end? 45? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
June 6th.
June 6th.
June 6th.
Okay.
And we were in France on the 6th. So we heard the celebrations, but we were already out of Germany.
How'd you like France?
How did I like it?
Yeah.
Fine, because I got to eat.
Yeah? Some French food or American food?
American food.
That's good. So, did you visit any other places in Europe?
Did I?
Yeah, besides England and France, well, and Germany, obviously. Flying over.
Well, other than Denmark.
Well, yeah, Denmark was no fun, though.
No. No, I really never had a desire to go back and see any of the cities or anything, but I would have liked to have maybe seen the prison camp.
Yeah. Well, wait, in the book, didn't you guys, I don't know if it was, you said there were 3 versions of the story, your version and your 2 buddies, about how you got a car?
Oh.
After the...
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
When we were liberated, well, of course the war had to go on. They couldn't stop for us, so we were ordered to stay in camp. Well, we were walking around, got out by the gate one moment, and we could see some of the prisoners on the other side. They were out. So, and there was a guard on the gate, American guard, of course. And so we asked him if we could go out. He said, no one goes out this gate. And we said, those guys are out. And he said, there's a hole in the fist down there. That's the way they're getting out. So we went down, found the hole, and went out. Well, we were walking down the road, and here a civilian came driving a car. So we kicked him out and took the car. And we went to uh, the, the Army had set up checkpoints all along. So we drove to one of the checkpoints to get gas, and they filled up the gas tank, and they said there's a spare wheel out there that'll fit this car, and they gave us a spare wheel and everything, and we took off to Munich. Well, when we got to Munich, well, they had military police, stationed around, and one of them motioned us into a courtyard, and we had to get back to camp, and we were going to get out, and he wouldn't let us out. But one of the fellows in the car with us had been an MP, so he talked to this guy and explained everything, and so we headed back to camp in a hurry because we knew that we were going to be flowing out, and we didn't want to be left behind.
Well, and then is that when you missed Patton coming?
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that? Were you upset?
Oh, I'd kind of like to have seen him. But it's kind of funny. I've read 2 or 3 versions of Patton coming into the camp. One was he was on a tank. Another was in a jeep. And there was something about his pearl handle pistols too that I don't know whether he did have them or didn't have them. But there's several versions on when Patton came into camp. But I didn't get to see him.
Because you were joyriding?
Yeah, we were.
Well, what did it look like? What did Munich look like when you got there?
You had to weave your way through the rubble. It had been bombed real heavily.
And were there any German civilians around still in Munich?
Oh, yeah, there were civilians around. In fact, most of the towns you went through, they'd have a white sheet hanging out the window telling you that give up.
Yeah. Well, and then Hitler just kind of cowered out in his little underground bunker.
Yeah.
That's like so much for his people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible. Well, what do you think about like other wars that we have? Vietnam or Korea?
Oh, I have mixed reactions. All mostly favorable, but I can't see. I haven't been able to completely understand this post-stress syndrome. They talk about. Here we went out day after day, knowing that you're going to get shot, and hear these people come back, but they were kind of fighting a different kind of a war. We saw what was coming. They don't know what's coming. So I have mixed feelings.
Yeah, I wonder about that. The post-traumatic stress syndrome.
The what?
The post-traumatic
Yeah.
stress syndrome. You hear of a lot of Vietnam vets complaining about that, or even guys coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's hard for me to understand it, but I can see one of the other side to it. There must be something to it, or there wouldn't be so many.
Yeah. Well, maybe is it because they're ground troops and they see something more violent looking?
I don't think it's anything, but it's knowing. It's afraid of running into these roadside bombs. You know, I can see that'd be nerve-wracking to be going up the road and hear the truck in front of you blows up. So I can see I can see their feeling there.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be really scary.
Yeah.
I think these two want out.
I don't know how long they'll be gone. Trying to think of some of the other things that.
And I was trying to think of some of the other stuff that I read in the book.
Oh, I know one thing that interested me anyway. One in one, of course, there were several prison camps, and they were moving prisoners from one camp to a less desirable camp, and the commandant didn't like it and was complaining, and so he said insisted they quit. He said, if you don't quit, we're going to riot. And he said, there's I don't know how many prisoners, but only 400 of you. And he said, if we riot, you'll kill a lot of us, but we'll kill all of you. And they said it quit. It quit.
Wow.
I always wondered too. There was always this question of will they execute you or wipe out the camp? And one article I read was that, and this is Stalag, I don't know if it's Stalag 3 or not, but anyway, one of the camps, that they had prepared for it. My question was, how were they prepared for it? And in this article, they told how they said when it starts to happen, we'll storm the fence in hopes that some get through to let the world know what happened.
Wow.
So that was always on your mind.
Did you know about that at the time?
No, oh no. It apparently wasn't in our camp. But there were a lot of different camps. Most of them were for infantry or ground troops. Because there's only two Air Force camps, Stalag Luft 3 and a place they call Barth, which is up on the North Sea or something. You don't hear much about it, but you hear an awful lot about Stalag Luft 3.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. More, this Great Escape for one thing. Of course, that was widely publicized and movie made and everything, which wasn't very close.
It wasn't very accurate.
No.
No. I'm
No.
gonna have to watch that one. Did they take a little too much liberty with the story?
One thing, Steve McQueen was in it, and he had a real wild motorcycle ride, and he jumped fences and everything. He eventually got caught, but that never happened. There was never any ride like that.
And did he say the camps for officers? Was it the camps or the barracks from officers to?
Stalag, it was all officers, American and English.
But did they? You said they treated people, or were those? They brought in prisoners from another camp that weren't officers.
In our camp,
Yeah.
they brought in some enlisted men to do the menial work. And they were glad to do it because they were treated better. The officers were treated better than the enlisted men, and but they didn't do real dirty work. They did like it. They ran the cookhouse because they had this boiling water in there. That's something that we don't have to do this, and the colonel said, all right, you go back to your own camp. So they weren't overdue, and they were glad to do it, you know. But you always find one that complains or something.